Sam and Sam Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. My name is Sam McGinnis, one of your co-hosts for the Sam and Sam Show. I'd like to welcome on, as always, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm doing great, McGinnis. It's good to be back to you again this Friday.
Yeah, it's a good Friday night, and we've got some great stuff today, a new segment as well, but let's get right into it with some NFL news.
Yes, we have a lot to talk about regarding the NFL. Not a lot to talk about, actually, with the NFL, more for the NBA.
Yeah.
With the NFL, some stuff we just talked about. Tampa Bay Buccaneers have re-signed running back Leonard Fournette, so he's coming back next year. And they also re-signed Ndamukong Suh since the last time we had a show. So now they're bringing back two more starters from that team. Playing in the Super Bowl. Actually, all their stars, all 22 of them, will be back with the team this coming season. The only player who was really crucial in that run, who's not back yet, was Antonio Brown. So basically, we get a full another year of Tom Brady and Tampa Bay Buccaneers at full strength.
And I'll say Antonio Brown wasn't a huge – they would have won it without Antonio Brown 100%. He was a nice addition, but I think they definitely would have won without it.
I think they would have won it without Antonio Brown, but to blow him off like that would be kind of – I mean, he was very good for them down the stretch. He got hurt right towards the end of the playoffs or towards before the playoffs, but he was very good for them down the stretch. And he had a touchdown in that Super Bowl game. So to say that he was not a factor in that playoff run. He had two touchdowns in the playoffs, by the way, too. So to say that he was not a factor in that whole run was kind of – I can't really get behind that.
I don't know. I just don't think it's as big of a deal to re-sign Antonio Brown, though they probably will.
Yeah, I think the only person who we know for a fact that can control Antonio Brown's ego for an extended period of time, right, Brady. So I'd assume that, if someone's going to get him, Russell Wilson's been advocating for him in Seattle, but I would assume that Tampa Bay is probably the front runner to get Antonio Brown back in the fold. Some other news. Big trades, McGinnis. Big trades in the NFL today. All of them involving draft picks.
Sir.
And first trade we need to talk about, the San Francisco 49ers traded the 12th overall pick in this year's draft, a third-round pick in this year's draft, and first-rounders in 2022 and 2023, so 3 first-round picks and a third-rounder, the Miami Dolphins for a third overall pick in the draft. So San Francisco's moving up to third overall, and you don't move up that high, you don't trade that much away unless you're going to take a quarterback, McGinnis.
Yep. See, it would have been stupid not to at least try to get a quarterback in all this mess. They probably paid a little high for it, but they need one. Jimmy Garoppolo is not the answer.
Well, no, but they're not getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. They're starting Jimmy Garoppolo next year.
Oh, yeah.
So
down the
they're
stretch.
not trading him. People keep talking about him trading. They've already reported that they're not going to trade him, at least not before the start of the year. And I don't think they will either. Because the best quarterback that's going to be available is either going to be Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Trey Lance is not a day one starter. Justin Fields, I think, could be. But Trey Lance, definitely not. So if you end up drafting Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be your starter for most of next year. Until he gets hurt or until they get bored and decide to put Trey Lance in. Basically is what's going to happen. So I think that they way overpaid for this. I mean, 3 first-round picks to go up. I understand that you want to get up and get your guy, but Garoppolo, when healthy, is probably a top 16 quarterback. And if you're going from 16 to maybe 12 with the Justin Fields or with
for a 3 first-round pick.
Yeah, and you give 3 first-round picks. I mean, that to me, that's a reach. That's just a reach.
Here's the thing. What they paid for would be the price of Russell Wilson, and what they're going to get is probably about a Matthew Stafford or less.
Or less. Probably less. I would go on the side of less. So
So that was probably one of the dumber decisions. Not as bad as Andy Dalton as your starting QB, though.
Well, yeah, but considering what they're paying him, it's not probably a bad deal. It's just that Chicago is.
Yeah, but like winning games, I think that's a thing. Apparently not for the Bears this season, but I think generally.
No, it hasn't been for the Bears for a little while. But and then another trade right after that. So the Dolphins trade out of 3 to go on to 12, and then they immediately traded with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles ended up trading away the 6th overall pick in the draft and pick 156. The Dolphins, who traded pick number 12, 123 in this year's draft, and a 2022 first rounder. So basically 2 first rounders and pick 123 to move up 6 spots with the Eagles. Now, this is very weird, but ultimately, the Dolphins walk away from this with an extra first-round pick and an extra third-round pick. So they did make something out of this. They did benefit quite a bit, actually, from just moving back 6 spots. But it's very interesting that Miami would move back to 12 and then jump back to number 6. There's got to be someone out there, whether it's Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, or maybe Penei Sewell, who they really want to draft.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this is probably overpaying too, unless they get some generational talent. But I don't
They
know.
could though. They could with if Kyle Pitts is there.
But I don't know. If you're going to pay that high a price, I'd like to know that it's not going to be a bust, because one of these situations could end up being like, wow, you paid 3 first-round draft picks for Johnny Manziel, that kind of a thing. So I'm sitting here like, I feel like that's not the brightest decision, but they'll look brilliant if it somehow works out.
I feel very comfortable with all 3 of the guys I mentioned, Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, and Penny Sewell. They will not be busts. So I feel very confident that all 3 of those guys will work out. And I think you have to be. If you're moving up that far in your Miami, I think you have to be going after one of those 3 players.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it has to be. But even still, 3 first-round picks for 1 first-round pick, essentially, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, but Miami, though, for Miami, it works out because Miami ends up getting – they walk away with an extra first-round pick. So they get a little something extra there.
So I'm thinking more on the 49ers. There.
Yeah, the 49ers, I'll agree with that's a bit of a reach there. So Marshall Lattimore got arrested today. He's obviously a Pro Bowl cornerback for the New Orleans Saints. And I'm only bringing this up because I was running through a mock draft earlier today, and I actually ended up mocking a cornerback to the New Orleans Saints because Marshall Lattimore is entering the final season of his rookie contract. He's going to be paid over $10 million this year. And he got arrested for having a loaded gun that was stolen. So there's not going to be suspended. He'll probably be fined. I don't think he's going to be suspended for this. So we'll see how that works out. But I just think that this might push New Orleans, who are already in a very tight situation, to potentially not re-sign Marshall Lattimore even more. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but I just think that's something to keep an eye on that aspect.
Yeah, and from the games I've seen, Lattimore's been very hit or miss. Usually hit, but there have been occasions he's gotten burned. But I still think this goes back to what we said about the NFL being kind of soft on punishments in general.
Yeah, we'll see, because I don't know what the NFL will do about this. I really don't. So we just got to wait and see how this plays out.
Yeah.
A couple signings we have to talk about that have happened since our last show. Former, I think he was an All-Pro, safety Anthony Harris. He should have been at the very least last year, or I guess 2 years ago now. Safety Anthony Harris, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, is signing with the Philadelphia Eagles on a very cheap deal. I think it's only a 1 year, $5 or $6 million. So that's a great pickup for Philadelphia. Deshaun Jackson, speedster wide receiver, signing with the Los Angeles Rams. He can still run too. He's very, very talented, and the athletic gift has not faded over the years. And the Giants are getting cornerback Adoree Jackson, wide receiver Kenny Galladay. So those are 2 huge pickups from New York. I think the Giants have spent less money than the New England Patriots did, but the Giants have gotten much better than the Patriots have, despite signing fewer players.
Well, I think I'm not sure that's necessarily fair yet to say. I think it's going to depend, because here's my thing. I think that Bill Belichick could make those players turn back into form because it's Bill Belichick. And if that's true with every single or most of the players he signed, I think in the end that could potentially be a better situation than the Giants. But I'm not 100% sure that'll happen. But I think if there's somebody was going to do it, it'd be Bill Belichick.
Yeah, but a lot of these guys Bill Belichick has signed are not like former stars. A lot of them are guys who just had their best seasons of their careers. And the issue is that usually when a player peaks, they cannot maintain that production, especially once changing teams. So the issue that is they overpaid for guys who just had their best years and are now going to go and probably have a worse year in New England. So I think that's probably the biggest concern with me and the Patriots right now.
He reminds me a little bit of Steve Yzerman. I know he's currently running the Red Wings, and they're kind of sucking. But I'm starting to see the plan unfold a little bit with pieces like Bobby Ryan and Thomas Greiss. You're getting decent pieces that aren't the core yet, but they're going to be the supporting depth cast to that core.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
He's not on board.
No, I'm not.
The Giants are still going to be worse than the Patriots, though, just because it's the Giants.
Well, yeah, just because Bill Belichick.
Fumbling.
But also, some other news, the Seahawks have cut defensive tackle Jaron Reed. They signed an extension just last year, but I guess they decided to save the money instead and use it on re-signing free agent defensive end Carlos Dunlap instead. So Jaron Reed is out. That's a free agent I think a lot of people will probably try to pick up there. And the Dolphins cut former first-round pick Isaiah Wilson. This was the tackle that Tennessee traded to Miami for like a 7th-round pick. And less than a week or so after being traded there, they've already cut him because he was caught on video dancing shirtless in like a strip mall on top of a car and skipped like workouts he said he was going to show up to and all that stuff. So he's now out of the NFL.
And that is why you don't sign partiers to your team. I've had a few of those kind of people on teams I've been on before, not of that necessary extreme, though one of them, yeah. Even if they're good talent-wise, it ends up meaning nothing because they'll cause more destruction than they're worth. So I think it was a good idea to cut people like that.
No, I agree. Cutting bait was probably the smart move. And this is a guy now who I can't imagine someone will call him. I can't imagine he'll get back in the NFL at this point. It will take years for him to get back in the NFL if he decides he wants to play football again. But for now,
I'm not 100% sold on that because literally Antonio Brown.
Yeah, but Antonio Brown wanted to play football. This guy wants to party. Also Antonio Brown was a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver.
Yeah,
this guy's played 2 snaps in his career.
Coming in though. So I think there's gonna be a second chance for him somewhere. I just don't know where yet. I think maybe not soon, but he will.
Yeah, I don't see it happening this year, or at least not before the start of the season. We have some brief Major League Baseball news here, but yes. I guess you can run through that because I know you've added that there. We got one line here, so we don't talk a lot of baseball in this show, but we'll add this in real quick.
No, and I wish we did more. I want to get our former MLB player on here at some point who does stuff with us. But yeah, the MLB is starting on April 1st. All the teams are going to be playing day one. I'm definitely going to be watching some stuff. I don't know a ton about the MLB, but I'd like to bring it up. It's another big thing in the sports world, so you got to mention it.
Yeah, Major League Baseball. I know they've had their spring training games going on for a while. I've seen the highlights in the morning when I wake up. So they have their guys going out there. They're playing right now, getting ready. And there are a lot of headlines coming in. There are a lot of new storylines coming off last season for Major League Baseball. So I'm sure that it's going to be refreshing to them to get into a new season, one that won't be severely shortened like last year's was. But now we're on to the NBA news, and this might be the most time of our show today just because of the trade deadline.
There's a lot. Trade deadline stuff, and this is exactly what it's going to be in a couple of weeks, right after the NHL trade deadline, which is on April the 12th, by the way. So this is very much so going to go back and forth pretty quick.
All right, I'll prepare myself for that time. But starting us off, the Miami Heat, who are my favorite team, they've acquired Victor Oladipo from the Houston Rockets for Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and 2022 first-round swap rights, basically pick swaps at the time.
Right.
They're acquiring Victor Oladipo basically in this situation just for Kelly Olynyk because Avery Bradley really hasn't played that much. Kelly Olynyk, a guy who's not a very good defensive center, more of just a three-point shooter, a stretch big. I like this a lot. I'm not a huge fan of Victor Oladipo. I did not like it when I heard they were acquiring Victor Oladipo. I thought for sure we were getting rid of one of our younger players like Kendrick Nunn, Tyler, who have not played great this year, but I think would still hold more value than a guy like Victor Oladipo who's been injured and is highly inconsistent at times. He's just not effective offensively. He's got very little shooting percentage. But we didn't really give up much for Victor Oladipo whatsoever, so I'm actually kind of okay with this deal.
Yeah, no, you got scrubs for potential help on depth.
Yeah. Maybe I wouldn't consider him a star at this point. Not a star on the Miami Heat, but he might see some starting time depending on injuries. And the Heat need help right now. The Heat are sliding down standings very quickly.
Well, and that's what the depth is for. If you've got and we've seen this with backup quarterbacks, backup goaltenders, if you've got a good depth guy that can come in, he can actually give you survivability for the time that your starters are out. Heck, we've seen this even with Drew Brees and the magic they've pulled off with his injuries over the years.
Yeah, you need to have some depth there. And I don't know. I still think this is a decent move because you don't risk a lot, but I also think there's a chance that he just totally flames out and doesn't help Miami whatsoever. I don't know if he's going to fit the mentality in Miami, which since Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo have been there, has always been to grind and work very hard. I don't know that he is the type of player to do that anymore based on some of the things he's said and done in the past 2 years or so. But we'll find out. The New Orleans Pelicans are trading three-point sniper J.J. Redick and Nicolo Melli, to the Dallas Mavericks. I think I still screwed that name up anyways. For James Johnson, Wes Iwundu, and a 2021 second-round pick. So basically, not very much in return, but they kind of are offloading some older players here with larger contracts. And the Pelicans are just a very weird team right now.
They're an enigma.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell how serious you're supposed to take the New Orleans Pelicans because they have Brandon Ingram and they have Zion Williamson, two legitimate all-star caliber players.
Right. But
they still stink. They're still a bad team.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Again, there are plenty of teams like this. They've got a few players, but no legitimate core. And sometimes they just have good players, and some teams suck. For instance, the Calgary Flames.
It happens.
It absolutely happens.
The Orlando Magic were very active at the trade deadline. They traded All-Star center Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu to the Chicago Bulls for Otto Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr. I do like Wendell Carter quite a bit. And also 2 first-round picks going that way as well. So Orlando gets picks for getting rid of basically offloading their best player in Vucevic. And they turn around then, do a deal with the Denver Nuggets where they send Aaron Gordon, arguably their second or third best player, and Gary Clark to Denver in return for Gary Harris, rookie R.J. Hampton, and a 2025 protected first-round pick. And they did a deal with the Boston Celtics where I sent guard Evan Fournier, who I believe is going to be a free agent this offseason.
Yep.
To Boston. And Boston sent 2 second-round picks in return. So essentially they offloaded a bunch of guys with big contracts to get draft picks and cap space moving forward. The Orlando Magic are perennial rebuild mode. So I don't really care whatsoever they do because essentially they're never going to be good. I don't care if you got so many picks for the next few years. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be a good team.
Well, and sometimes you can misuse great talent, which I'll also be talking about later. But yeah, even if you got some great generational player, is even going to want to stick around.
Well, that's kind of what happened with Dwight Howard in Orlando a long time ago. Now, granted, Dwight didn't necessarily go on and light it up anywhere else, but at the same time, Orlando's not a place right now that's going to be attracted to free agents. It's not going to be attracted to the stars once they arrive there. So to me, Orlando's just kind of this spot that will forever be capable of maybe getting the ace seed in the Eastern Conference because the Eastern Conference is not that terrific. But at the same time, I don't see them ever being contenders in any serious fashion.
Yeah, no. They're usually only, I would say, in modern day NBA now, not if you're thinking like prior Cavaliers Golden State time, I think there's 4 to 7 legitimate contenders, something like that in the NBA at this point.
Yeah, one of those contenders is the Los Angeles Clippers, who sent Lou Williams to Atlanta, along with 2 future second-round picks for point guard Rajon Rondo. And Rondo, by the way, was just on the Los Angeles Lakers when they won the NBA title last year.
There you go.
And they're bringing him in, I presume, because he's so effective in the playoffs. I mean, playoff Rondo is the thing. This guy goes into the playoffs and he doubles his output every year. He just did with the Lakers this past season, so I have to believe that in the playoffs he's going to be effective again. And Lou Williams, the guy who's 3-time Sixth Man of the Year, terrific scorer, never was very good defensively, but he's really dropped off and seen his load. Well, not load. He's seen his offensive load drop off quite a bit as well, which is why his numbers are down so much. He's just not getting up the shots he used to, partially because now he's being made expendable by all the pieces that are around him in Los Angeles. So he's going to Atlanta, and they get Rajon Rondo.
Yeah. Hold up. To your point about him being a playoff kind of guy, I kind of feel that. And I feel like teams should start, especially playoff-bound teams, should start trading for people at some of these deadlines that are specifically just playoff mentality, because we see this in like Nick Foles. For some reason, can't perform during the regular season, but you get to the playoffs, he turns it on. We also see this with Devontae Smith-Pelly. He helped the Capitals break their long streak. He's now in the AHL. That is correct. He's not even playing in the NHL anymore, and he's one of the reasons they won the Stanley Cup. So I think it's putting proper pieces in the right places is a lot about winning championships.
Yeah, I think Rondo will actually help them out quite a bit there, surprisingly. A trade kind of flew under the radar, but I think it's a big deal. So the Toronto Raptors sent Norman Powell to the Portland Trail Blazers in exchange for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood, guys I like, but guys who aren't superstars. On the other hand, Norman Powell, also not a superstar, but he's shooting almost 50% from the floor this year and 43.9% from three while shooting over 6 threes per game. That's high volume. That's a high percentage for a guy like him. And he'll work wonders alongside Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. He'll be fantastic for them. Portland currently the 6th seed. McCollum's missed a lot of the year. I could see Portland going as high as the 4th seed before the playoffs actually start.
All right. Interesting.
And Norman Powell is going to be a major reason for that happening. I have a long paragraph here. I'm just going to shorten this up here. The Philadelphia 76ers basically acquired George Hill. He's a veteran point guard who helped them out a little bit with ball handling and defensively. Basically, that's what this whole paragraph shortens down to. And the Thunder got Austin Rivers. Those are the only 2 pieces that really matter, unless you want to talk about Tony Bradley also going to OKC. Other than that, the other pieces in this trade don't really matter that much.
Yeah. How much do you think this helps the 76ers?
Not a lot. Not really, not a lot.
No,
I mean,
no, I was
sometimes
curious if you'd say something different, but yeah, no.
sometimes the NBA just likes to recycle the same players over and over again. I'm not saying George Hill's a bad player. George Hill's a good player, and he can shoot from 3 as well. The thing is, though, at some point, these guys get passed around so many times, and there's always at the trade deadline or something like that. People are trying to acquire this guy to think he's going to help them win a title. I don't think George Hill's won a title in his life unless he did it with the Golden State Warriors. I don't think he did. So,
yeah.
I don't know where all the belief is coming that this is going to be the piece that's going to help you win a championship, or it's going to add depth to help you win a championship.
You're reminding me of
proven
Taylor
that you
Hall
can do
so
that.
much. You remind me of Taylor Hall when you say that so much, because that's literally his exact profile. More that we'll be talking about later also.
And then last bit of NBA news here. LaMarcus Aldridge has agreed to a buyout with the San Antonio Spurs, so he is now a free agent. And Andre Drummond has got a buyout with the Cleveland Cavaliers, so he's a free agent as well. The Miami Heat are moving in to try to get LaMarcus Aldridge, apparently. He'll be a nice stretch 4 for them. And Andre Drummond, I think Boston's talked to Andre Drummond, and I think that the Lakers have talked to Andre Drummond as well. And the Lakers really need him right now because LeBron James is out. I forgot to mention this. LeBron James, by the way. What was it? I forget the injury now. Not a sprained ankle, but high ankle sprain. There you go. High ankle sprain. He's going to miss potentially a month, if not more, basketball. Anthony Davis has been out for over a month at this point, and the Lakers are going to start plummeting in the standings. They're already 4th in the West. I could see them dropping maybe as low as 7th by the time this is all said and done, just because they have – they're a team that relies heavily on LeBron and AD being on the court, and when neither one of them is, they're a bad team. So I think there's a situation where if you're the Lakers, you probably need to get Andre Drummond just because that he's at least a guy who can go out there and get you 20 points and 12 rebounds per game, or maybe 16 points and 12 rebounds per game. You don't have a guy like that on your roster right now. That's probably going to be a huge free agent target for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting because if they somehow miss the playoffs due to this, which I don't think they will, I think that'd be dropping.
No, I don't think they will either.
But this could end up being a situation in which they face one of those top rivals in the first round just because neither AD nor LeBron were playing. So you might not have that normal conference finals fight versus whoever wins the first round. And all of a sudden, for 1 year, the first round is actually going to matter.
Well, yeah, it's going to be very different if you are the 4 seed and you're playing. Although, to be honest, the top 6 seeds are actually all really good in the West this year. I could see any of them beating each other. But you're looking at like a Lakers could play the Clippers or a Suns team or something like that if they fall too far. And you certainly, if you're LeBron and AD, you don't want that to happen. But
right,
it's always a possibility.
About it.
But now we have a new segment on the show today. Why don't you explain it a little bit to us?
Yes. All right. So, Elimination Graveyard. This is pretty simple. So, for all sports everywhere, we're going to cover when a team gets eliminated from the playoffs or gets eliminated from playing in the playoffs. So, I'm liking this one. So, basically, what we're going to talk about is why they got eliminated and what their future kind of holds. And today we have 2 in the NHL. They haven't technically been eliminated, but putting in perspective, their chances of making the playoffs are less than 0.1% chance. So, eliminated might as well be. We're going to start with the Buffalo Sabres. I actually wrote an entire article on this, so fresh in my mind. This one's fun. Okay, so the Buffalo Sabres currently are on pace to break the all-time NHL losing streak in the modern era. It's already bad enough, but let's explain why this is. So, Taylor Hall. We were talking about this a little bit earlier with players that just get kind of shuffled around. Taylor Hall has been shuffled around a lot. He typically underperforms once he's been shuffled around. This year, it has dropped to an exponential rate. He has scored 2 goals this season. 2? It's been 30-plus games, and he scored 2 goals. For a guy that is usually projected to get around, 40, 50 points, you should not be scoring 2 goals in 30-plus games. So that's a part of the reason they lost, or aren't going to be making the playoffs. Jack Eichel, this one's a little bit more interesting. Typically a really good player. I mean, he's a really good talent. A lot of people are hoping at some point he's going to get traded out of the Sabres because he just straight up does not deserve to be in that organization. This year, high-end underperforming, very similar to Hall. Both of them have a decent number of assists, but again, the goals are very much so lacking. And it's insane to watch all this. And Jeff Skinner's dropped off a cliff. We talked about him in
we talked about him last week.
Prior player comparison, there was at one point a goalie was beating him in points this season. By the way, they are paying these 3 players alone. They are paying a combined $27 million this year to score almost no points to be heard of.
All right.
This is why they suck, because the few players that were supposed to be good, because they actually upped in talent, pure talent this year, and absolutely declined in performance. And I think part of that goes back to Hall. Everywhere he's gone has been a train wreck. Ever since 1 year, he had 1 year with the New Jersey Devils where he won the Hart. After that, it has never been the same. And people are expecting somehow he's still that player, and he's just not. I don't know if that year was a fluke or what that was about, but it's just not the same. And the goaltending from Carter Hutton has been horrendous. He's injured now, though, so you don't really have to worry about him. As sad as it is that he's still injured, you never want to see a player injured, but it actually helps you out, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, so we've got 2 teams here in the Elimination Graveyard. Sorry, I don't know what that was. The Red Wings. Your Red Wings are here, McGinnis.
Yes, they are. And funny enough, this is not because they're doing worse than some of the other teams that haven't been. It is because their division is tougher, is the reason they actually weren't on the cycle this morning of 0.1% chance. There are teams with worse records that have better chances of making the playoffs than they do, oddly enough. This goes back to we're still in a rebuild. Everybody sucks. I think Bobby Ryan, again, goes back to supporting cast. I'm starting to see Steve Yzerman's plan coming together. Thomas Greiss is going to be a great future backup goaltender for the Red Wings. Bobby Ryan, good third liner, maybe second, depending on how good our roster is at any one point in time. Dylan Larkin being named the captain. You're kind of starting to see the outward pieces being put in. But yes, the offense is still atrocious. We've missed gimme goals in front of the net. Poor Bernier has been an absolute beast in net, but has proceeded to get injured because, we apparently, pushing people into our own goaltender because that's a smart thing to do. I think Bernier has been the most destroyed out of all of this because he's been absolutely phenomenal and then stuck on this awful team where they're giving up 2-on-1s and breakaways all the time, and he's still saving them, but that's only going to help you so much. So I think this is a deserved elimination, but I think within the next 5 years we'll be in the playoffs. And a bit of a surprise. I think you got to put the core together, and I think this might be the last year of putting the outside pieces, and then the following year we'll start putting the core together.
So within the next 5 years, that's over a quarter of your lifetime, McGinnis. You realize that, right? You're saying that within a quarter of your lifetime you will actually be contenders again. That's a long time to wait.
I think, though, here's the difference. Would you rather wait for a Tampa Bay Lightning or get a Panthers or a Hurricanes now? A Panthers or a Hurricanes can win you a series, maybe 2. The Tampa Bay Lightning can win a championship. I'd rather wait 5 for the championship.
All right, there you go. Enjoy your waiting, McGinnis. It's going to be a long, lonely time. But I'm sorry, I'll still tease you.
In the next 5 years, so 5 or less. 5 or
All right,
less.
okay. I'll still tease you for the majority of those times until you actually win it, and then I'll light it up finally. But because we spent so much time talking about some NHL teams, it's a good time to transition into some NHL news now.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff today. I need to look back at this real quick. So I think this is scary just because it happened in a pro sports game. And I'm going to read this for quotes so I don't mess it up. Yeah. But yes, a ref was mic'd up, and right before they turned to the commercial break, because they like, putting in game sounds and stuff, a ref was, yes, this is legitimate, recorded saying it wasn't much. He's talking about a penalty he called there. But I wanted to give Nashville an effing penalty and then it just cut off as they transitioned to a commercial. Oh boy, by the way, this ref has been fired. His retirement date was on April the 26th.
Yeah, I heard he worked over like 1,000 games during his career, something like that. He worked quite a while in the NHL.
Yeah, some context that I heard. I don't know if this one is legitimate or not, but I figured I want to throw this in because I'm usually in favor of the refs because I think they're given too much crap, though this is really hard to make look good in any way. The potential context here is Nashville was, quote, out of control, and the ref kind of wanted to rein them in. Even if that's true, I don't see how you can call what sort of was, but not really a penalty. But this doesn't look very good, Teets.
No, it's kind of like a payback penalty for something you did earlier in the game. I can't get behind somebody. I mean, if it's a penalty, call it black and white. You're a referee. You're not supposed to put your emotions in these kind of games. You're supposed to call it how it is. Just play it by the rule book. Don't start making stuff up. And if you feel like you're losing control of the game, I don't know. I can't get behind stuff like this. And I understand, like, maybe I can't tell if it's an overreaction, underreaction. It's one of those two. I don't think it's necessarily hit on the nose, but I think that there certainly are a lot of issues here. And I think you could see situations like this in other sports where it has become problematic, where you have had scandals or things like that pop up. So I understand the quick reaction in the NHL here, because you do not want this to go out and something like the referees are throwing the games in their own favor, or they're refereeing the games to their own tune instead of actually the rule book. You can't allow something like that to happen, which is why they obviously had to go out and fire him immediately after. I think less than 24 hours after.
It was less than 24 hours. It was the next morning. And here's another funny part of this. Clearly, the ref was not thinking at all when he said this, because apparently when he said this, he was literally, and this is a quote from Matt Duchene. I don't have the exact quote, but I'll paraphrase for you real quick. He was literally talking to one of the Nashville Predators players, or at least right next to him when he said that. Ref clearly was not in the building with his brain at all. Even if you're like a dirty ref, I don't even like, he wasn't even smart about being dumb.
Well, sometimes you get a little bit of a power trip and you maybe overestimate your vulnerability or invincibility in those kind of situations.
Also, you'd think if you're mic'd up, you wouldn't do that. No. I don't understand how this came through at all. I'd be curious to hear the ref's explanation for that, whether it's garbage or not. It's just another interesting perspective I'd like to hear. But yeah, that's not good news for the NHL. Good news, though. We do have some good news. There are new rules to the NHL draft lottery. So now instead of the top 16 teams being able to get the the first overall pick, only the top 11 can. And I believe, let me double check here real quick. But I believe the top, the team with the worst record, the lowest pick they can get is the third overall.
Oh, good news for your Red Wings then.
Yeah, so we actually got very much so screwed, and I'm wondering if this is part of the reason this is a rule now, because we got the fourth overall pick, and we had by far the worst record in the NHL. But this is kind of why I don't like draft lotteries much. I just kind of think it should be pretty cut and clear. Worst team to best team, you get the draft. Another note to it, and I lost my thought. Yeah, I completely lost it.
Nope, you're gone. Thought you're gone.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so a team cannot win the first overall pick more than twice within a 5-year period.
Okay, I actually like that rule. I do like that rule.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you can intentionally tank and just trade away all the other pieces and just grow talent over the years after losing a whole bunch, which is kind of starving the rest of the league of future talent.
I can get behind that. I do like that rule.
I actually really like this draft lottery restructure, because I don't think the 16th team should have a chance at the first overall pick, no matter how minor that is. I think the Rangers certainly weren't deserving of the first overall pick this last year. I mean, heck, they made the expansion playoffs or whatever. You should not be in any sense making the postseason and getting
playoffs
the first
and getting the first overall pick. Yeah, that's not what the first overall pick is for.
No, the first overall pick is for the team that sucks and actually needs the player.
You got some more news. Actually, there was a trade in the National Hockey League. This is not the NBA, but the trade deadline is coming up for the NHL. But there was a trade that already happened with Eric Staal. Yeah,
I really like this. So Eric Staal, he's been in the league forever, absolutely forever. But the Canadiens get Eric Staal for a 3rd and 5th round pick from, guess who, the Buffalo Sabres, who will definitely be sellers at the trade deadline, by the way. Not that they need to, but yeah, Eric Staal, you get a whole bunch of veteranosity there, and you also get some potential point scoring. He's been better in the past, and you can see the decline over the years, but he can still get some amount of points. So you're getting a veteran here, and he can still score at least somewhat. I really like this move, especially since they're sort of on the verge of being kicked out of the playoffs. Like, they're still in the lead, and it's a decent one, but there is a scenario which one of those teams in the Flames or Vancouver, if they get hot, could pass them. So I like the mentality. This is a good time to be buying and before the trade deadline, so a cheaper price.
Yeah, so you get him early on. He is 36 years old, though. From looks of it, his scoring has certainly dipped a little bit here from 2020 to 2021. But maybe is he going to play a more prominent role? Do you think than he was with Buffalo when he gets to his new home, or is it going to be more the same?
I could see him as a second line center or potentially third. Again, I really like him, and I think part of the reason this year it hasn't been as good is because it's the Buffalo Sabres and less to do with him. And again, if you look in his past, it's not like he can't score. And even his recent past, it's not like he can't score. It's just very recently that he's dropped off quite a bit. And again, I think that has partially just to do with the Buffalo Sabres' current season. And again, veteran. I don't mind bringing in some veteran talent here and there to help the young guys out.
And you can do that at the NHL Trade Deadline, which is coming up on April 12th. Who's going to be buying and who's going to be selling McGinnis?
All right, so I'll pull out the whole sheet here in a second. We're going to start with the Sabres since we're already talking about them. We have potentially another Taylor Hall trade because they're seeing him now as a cancer, which I'm not surprised. So they might get rid of him, and some poor team is going to be like, oh, this is going to be a great guy to get, and then they're going to tank. So keep that in mind. The Buffalo Sabres have some great talent. They have Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner, all who are having bad years, but potentially with new blood could find their own. So definitely the Sabres will be selling. Let's see here. Chicago and Columbus. We're going to move to the Discover division here real quick. Columbus is in an interesting scenario. I think Torts will end up buying just because he's aggressive and probably realizes his job is on the line once again. We saw this a few years ago, by the way, when he was the year they won and beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, actually.
Right. What year was that?
I think that was 2019, if I'm remembering.
Yeah, it might have been, yeah. I can't remember.
Yeah, that was absolutely 2019 because they won it in 2020, 1 year later. He bought a whole bunch of crap, and then at the same time, the Tampa Bay Lightning happened to choke, which saved his job. That is not going to happen again. They might not even make the playoffs. First off, if he's going to keep his job, 1, they have to make the playoffs. He knows this. 2, they probably have to win a series. I don't see either of those things happening.
Yeah.
I think making the playoffs is far more likely because Chicago has dropped off a little bit recently. But yeah, they're definitely going to be buying along with Chicago is going to be interesting. Chicago has been overachieving, and technically this was supposed to be another tank year. So are they going to buy and just forget about tanking entirely and forget about it?
Or are they going to actually try to tank?
Or are they going to try to actually go into their rebuild mode and just assume this is a fluke, or are they just going to go now? It's a fantastic question to which I have no answer to because I don't think they do yet either.
Because they're smack dab in the middle of the standings for the Central Division.
Yeah, and currently they're holding on to a playoff spot. They'd probably get smacked around by the Lightning in the first round. In fact, they would absolutely get smacked around by the Lightning in the first round. They've been smacked a number of times after they've played the Lightning this year. So, yeah, that's a very tough situation for them to be in because, again, you're not supposed to be this good. There's a decent likelihood you won't be in the future, but you are this good now, and could you build a core right now? It's a tough question.
Anyone else who's going to be trading away a lot of players here at the deadline?
Yeah, so we're going to move on here to the Coyotes. Tank is coming. Kessel is gone. That's my thought. Kessel is gone. And once they've done that, yeah, bye-bye, Tank. It would be interesting to see if they somehow traded a goalie in that mess. I know they have the core. They think they have the core of the future or whatever. I would like to see them sell, but I think they'll end up doing pretty much nothing, which is unfortunate, minus Kessel. And one last team I wanted to address really quick. Actually, the Edmonton Oilers. They still have no depth scoring. This is hilarious to me. It's literally Connor McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Leon Draisaitl. That is what it's always been. It's going to continue to be that unless they find somebody. I am beyond frustrated and at the same time laughing at this team with everything because they're wasting a generational talent, 2 generational talents actually, in both Draisaitl and McDavid. And they still have no depth scoring. They haven't had any depth scoring since the moment McDavid has been there. McDavid, I'm surprised, isn't infuriated with that yet somehow. Maybe because
he might be. We just don't know about it.
Yeah, maybe he's being quiet about it, or maybe he's enjoying his own highlight reels too much because they make way too many of them. But yeah, they need depth scoring. They know it. They've known it. They tried to address it last year. It didn't work out in the playoffs. They're going to try and do it again this year.
Do you think that'll happen? Do you think they'll actually get someone this year or no?
They got somebody last year. They actually got a good player from actually the Detroit Red Wings last year, Anthony So. And I don't know, just hasn't panned out the way they were hoping it would. And sometimes that happens with players. They need to look for some kind of a decent depth forward because you're not looking for a star, right? And you've already spent a crap ton of money on the forwards, but you need to look for some kind of top six being second line or third line players. And I would suggest more than one because having four players who can score versus three isn't that much of a difference. I would say they at least need to go after two or three depth forwards. That's what they need to be focused on. And maybe a goaltender because Mike Smith still can't be trusted, despite the fact that he's playing well.
Well, we'll see. I'm sure we'll get our audition in here before we actually start talking about all that. Because, again, the deadline isn't until April 12th. But we have something more immediate coming up here in our future. It's March Madness. We're down to the Sweet 16. Every bracket out there is busted, I'm pretty sure, at this point.
Every single one. I've not talked to a single person that their bracket isn't destroyed in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, we'll just quickly run through the games here for you. Gonzaga's playing Creighton up in the West, along with USC versus Oregon. In the South, you have Baylor versus Villanova, and Arkansas versus number 15 seed Oral Roberts, who no one expected would be here. In the Midwest, you have, and this is a really crazy one, Loyola Chicago, an 8 seed versus Oregon State, a 12 seed, and Syracuse, the 11 seed versus Houston, 2 seed, who actually probably should be there. I think everyone expected them to be there except for me because I picked Clemson. But then over on the east side, you have Michigan versus Florida State, the number 1 versus number 4. That's a pretty respectable matchup. Then you got number 11 UCLA, who played in the playing game against Michigan State, and I picked Michigan State, McGinnis. Instead, UCLA here is now in the Sweet 16 playing Alabama.
If there's something you can trust with me, it's what's exactly going to happen with my own teams. I can tell you because I watch them all the time. MSU is not trustworthy. I think this is the thing. The only team I trust that I'm actually a fan of is the Detroit Red Wings. They suck right now. They're not going to forever. Steve Yzerman is trustworthy. He built the Lightning juggernaut. Everything else is completely untrustworthy. That's why I didn't pick Michigan State for that. You should have trusted me on my own crap.
I should have, but those games are coming up on Saturday and Sunday. So it's certainly going to be fun. I'm going to be sitting in front of my TV the entire day watching those games play out because it's going to be exciting to actually see a Sweet 16 after. Again, we didn't have March Madness last year because of COVID-19. Now it's back, and it's more hectic than ever. So I'm going to really enjoy watching this play out. But what are your thoughts? Do you have any predictions, ideas here you want to get off your chest here about March Madness?
I think the greatest option for an upset right now is Florida State. I said we're talking about Michigan missing important player, and then on top of it, Florida State could end up, I think, in the Final Four at their best. I don't think they'll end up in the national championship, but they've got the players to get to a Final Four.
No, I tend to agree with you. Looking through the other games that are being played, Villanova is missing some guys, I believe, still. They're facing number 1 Baylor, who's been dominant so far in the tournament. Looking through, Oral Roberts versus Arkansas. I underrated Arkansas highly coming to this tournament, apparently.
But so what do you do with Oral Roberts? I didn't even know that school existed before this tournament, and now
I didn't either. But it's very.
Like, how about we just don't suck? How about we just beat a number 2 seed and then a number 7 seed and end up playing a number 3 seed? I don't know what the heck this team is.
No, I tend to agree with you. The matchup I would pick, or the upset I would pick, being number 4 Florida State versus number 1 Michigan. I think that's probably the best chance for there to be an upset. Although Oregon State versus Loyola Chicago, I really trust Loyola Chicago, but I think that's a team that could also potentially lose number 12 Oregon State going into this one. I feel pretty comfortable with Houston and Alabama beating their 11-seeded teams, their 11-seeded opponents in UCLA and Syracuse. So you feel comfortable with those matchups. Number 6 USC versus number 7 Oregon. Honestly, flip a coin to me. I'm not really going to vouch hard either way, although I do like some of the depth they have with the Mobley brothers on USC. And Gonzaga should crush Creighton, and like I said, Baylor should probably beat an undermanned Villanova team.
And do remember, Oregon didn't play their first game due to the other team getting COVID protocol, so they've played one less game than everybody else.
Yeah, which might mean fresher legs, but then again, you just are coming off a layoff here for a couple of days, so
Yeah.
fatigue probably won't be as big of a factor as it was in the first 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, just something to mention. I think we didn't cover it on our last Sam and Sam show, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, because I think that the cancellation happened like that night or the next night or something.
Oh, it happened like 20 minutes before or something stupid like that. I was getting ready.
Okay.
I was getting ready to watch that game, and then all of a sudden I was like, well, crap.
What do I do now?
I was going to watch this. Yeah.
All right, so that's your March Madness preview there. Now we're on to the segment we do every week called Thinking or Dreaming. Basically, this is a segment where we each read out 2 statements apiece, and we tell the other person, is this thinking, is this realistic, or is it dreaming? Is it just unrealistic? Are we not going to actually see this happen? So I'm going to read out my statement first, because you went first last week. So I'm going to give you one. And so McGinnis, is this thinking or dreaming? Referees should have to wear microphones for league officials. I'm talking about in general, in most leagues. Referees should have to wear microphones for league officials to review their performances and conversations.
See, the problem with this is it wouldn't solve the problem. This is the only reason I wouldn't implement this, because you know what would happen is instead of saying it, they just discuss things before the game or something. And that kind of stuff might happen anyway. The real question is to find out. Basically, you need to find out how bad it is right now. You can't try and fix something you don't know how bad it is. You could be giving, a gaping flesh wound a Band-Aid, or vice versa. So yeah, I think you got to assess what the actual problem is first. Problem is the problem could be attached to the leagues, and they're not going to review themselves. But if they're not a part of the problem, and it's just the refs, basically, as fans, we're left in the unknown. And I will say this. I think from a player's perspective, for the most part, I don't think games can be rigged because these players love it too much to even care for that. So it's got to be the only way these could be rigged is from the ref's perspective. So these leagues can only be rigged so much because the players would never do that. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and there's such an intense review by fans too now of all the things going on in games because they criticize the refs so much.
Yeah.
And they have so many camera angles and they have so many microphones around the court now that I find it very hard to believe there are games being fixed. But I think this is more not even just from a fixing game situation, which I don't believe is happening, but just reviewing referees and how good they are at their jobs. I mean, because there are times if a referee blows a call in a big moment, nothing happens to that referee. If a player does a bad thing in a big moment, if a player pushes their player, they get fined. If the player screws up, they get fined, they get suspended. That doesn't happen to referees. So I think there needs to be more of a review system over some referees and some of the decisions they make during games. Not necessarily because they're throwing games, but just because their thought process needs to be much more well explained to the general audiences why they're making some calls, especially ones that might be received poorly.
Yeah, so for me, this is thinking just because you want to assess how bad the current situation is across leagues. But at the same time, every ref is going to make a bad decision at some point in their career in a big moment. I don't think that's a fireable offense. I
agree. It's a thin line to walk. It's a very fine line.
Yeah, and think about the Saints game, for instance. Back in the day, the rule that came out of that was horrible, caused games to take way longer, and is now no longer a part of the NFL rules.
Yeah.
So I don't think making this more complicated is the thing. I think this is one, as a fan, you just got to suck up the fact that there are going to be bad calls sometimes, and the better team will usually win anyway. If it came down to a single call at the end of the game that the ref blew you wrong, clearly you should have played the game better and not been in that position. I know that's really harsh, but I think that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit harsh, but I agree with you for the most part in that situation. All right, hit me up with one of yours.
All right. Let's see. I completely forgot them, so I have to go back here. Yeah. The 76ers are one piece away from a championship. I know. I wanted to make this one tough intentionally.
I think, well, this is thinking because you added an RPs onto their roster. I think they would be championship caliber. My thing is where do they sit right now? If they played the Brooklyn Nets, they have a good matchup because I don't think there's anyone on the Nets that can cover Joel Embiid right now, the center. The issue is I don't know that Joel Embiid alone is good enough to help Philadelphia win this game. And Tobias Harris is a decent three-point shooter. They have good three-point shooters in Philadelphia. But the other star on that team is supposedly Ben Simmons, who does not shoot threes at all. He barely shoots first throw level jumpers. So to me, I think they are one. If you put Kevin Durant, like, it's a top piece, I understand that. If you put another top 20 player on the Philadelphia 76ers, I think they would be a championship caliber team. For me right now, it's just the team like them in Milwaukee. I won't believe it until I see it. I won't believe these are championship teams until I actually see them get there, because they've had the talent in the past, but they just haven't gotten there. So this is thinking. I believe they are one piece away from being that caliber team, but they also just have to prove it to me, because I know they're talented enough. They just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, they're, again, Calgary Flames. This is 100% what I think. You got a top 10 goaltender, good defensive pieces, some good offensive pieces, but you're sixth in your division. It's just kind of a big question mark.
Yeah, a little bit of a head scratcher there. My question for you, if the 49ers take a quarterback to number 3 overall in the draft, he won't play until at least week 8.
So that's going to depend. If Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt again, no, he'll play earlier than that. But no, this is dreaming. There's too much pressure in the NFL nowadays for the rookie to start immediately, whether he's ready or not. I think he'll come in earlier whether Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt or not, because Jimmy G won't solve their problems. They'll be sick of it. There'll be pressure to put the new guy in, and they will.
I agree with you here, because I think that it would be smart. Like, if it's Trey Lance, you really should have him sit for a while. But if you're taking a guy at 3, shouldn't you be able just to play him right away? Like, that's kind of the idea to some extent. He would be talented enough to just go in and start right away. That's why you pick guys that high. So I think you're right here. And again, like, you hit the nail on the head there when you said that there's so much pressure on the coaches right now and the front offices to start the guys.
With Baker Mayfield. It started with Baker.
Yeah. Well, it started even before that. I think it started with, like, a guy like Blake Bortles wasn't necessarily supposed to play the entire of his rookie season. He ended up playing quite a few games. So I think that for the past almost 10 years at this point now, you don't get guys like Aaron Rodgers anymore, or guys like Philip Rivers or Eli Manning, who have to basically sit for the first year of their careers. You don't get to see that happen anymore, because there's so much pressure on these coaches to play the rookies right away. So I think that this is a situation where you will see probably the rookie quarterback play maybe half the season for San Francisco, if not more.
Yeah. Until, of course, maybe he gets injured too, because, quarterbacks have a tendency to get injured over there for some reason for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, though Garoppolo was fairly healthy though in that Super Bowl run, but since then he's been that. Last year and even the year before the Super Bowl run, he was banged up quite a bit.
Yeah. Just unfortunate for him. Again, I don't care the player. You never want to see anybody injured.
Yeah.
All right. The Bears have to draft up if they want to have any sort of a shot at this year, or a decent QB for that matter.
Oh, that's thinking, but they're not going to draft up, and they're not going to have. They're not going to trade up in the draft, and they're not going to have a decent shot at winning. So it doesn't matter. It's a situation right now.
Have they just accepted to tank then with Andy Dalton? Is that like their thing, or are they like somehow pretending he's going to win them games?
Well, here's the thing: Andy Dalton's a decent quarterback. He's not a great QB. The issue with Chicago is this regime probably should have been fired last year, or probably should have been fired after the end of this past season.
How long have we even been talking about, like, Bears and QBs? I remember you and me, like, 2 years ago or 1 year ago, we're still talking about Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, it's a situation where they probably should have fired the general manager and head coach this past year, but they didn't do that. So now you're looking at a lame duck head coach and general manager essentially flying through an entire season by the seat of their pants here. And the issue with this is, if you're the owner, you don't want to let them trade 3 future first-round picks to move up to get a quarterback, because if they screw that up, then suddenly you're out the door with 3 first-round picks. You don't want to have these guys trading away future assets to draft a QB, only to fire these guys next year and bring in a new coach and a new general manager who are going to want to draft their own quarterback. So to me, they would have to move up to get someone decent, but they're not going to. I don't think there's a chance they have the ability to do that, because they don't have the assets to do it. And I don't know if the owner would even let them, because really this is, like I said, a lame duck regime at this point, and they're going to lose this year. They just have to accept that.
Still not going to be as bad as the Lions, though. I will say it's funny to say Jared Goff is not the worst QB in that division because Mitchell Trubisky.
No, he's not.
I would almost go as far to say, despite his inconsistency when he's hot, Mitchell Trubisky is better than Jared Goff because Jared Goff, the turnover machine, Jared Goff.
No. All right, Mitchell Trubisky can't hit the broadside of a barn. Mitchell Trubisky is so inaccurate that I would take Jared Goff over Trubisky every day of the week.
I don't trust the turnovers. The turnovers kill him. And that's
here's the thing with Trubisky, though, is they ran so many short passes that he didn't have the ability to turn the ball over. If you asked him to throw a normal route tree, you asked him to throw normal passes, he would have those turnover numbers.
Maybe. I don't think on the fumbles, but maybe the interceptions.
On the interceptions, not the fumbles. Fumbles are a little bit different because he's more mobile than Jared Goff is.
Well, and Goff's ball security is like negative 10,000.
Well, yeah, that also the ball security is pretty hard.
Also, quick, I want to talk about this real quick. We didn't have this on for the Sam and Sam show today, but can we please have like NFL receivers not pretending to be like swagger with like the ball out way here in one hand? Ball security is a thing, and we've seen turnovers as a result of them trying to be cool. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Just don't. Mate, like the rule always is just keep the ball tucked away until you get past the end zone, until you're in the end zone, then you can celebrate. But don't do anything ridiculous until you get there.
Like Lamar Jackson with the ball just running way out here. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's terrible.
Yeah, but someone like Lamar can get away with that sometimes because you're moving so fast that people can't catch you.
That's terrible ball security. It's just driving me insane. Great way to get a million turnovers.
It's true, but Lamar Jackson isn't up there on the turnover machine. He's not up there with Jared Goff, a guy who doesn't run at all. So
yeah, no, that's in the pocket security versus out of the pocket security. The thing he does that kind of makes up for it a little bit is he tucks it when people come in, but you're not always going to see him coming in, which is why I kind of have an issue with that. Plus, just guys that think they're arrogant enough to put themselves above the team like that kind of pisses me off. I like team players. So.
Yeah, but sometimes you're Lamar Jackson, you're carrying that offense pretty much. So you are a little bit above some of the parts of the team necessarily in those kind of situations. But
Maybe
I think that's about it for. Oh wait, no, we have a player comparison. I almost forgot to do this.
You forgot about your own player comparison. You get to do it. We can use.
I did. All right, so there's some 40-yard dashes up here from the top cornerback prospects in this draft. Although I hid one in there. There's one in there from an all-star, from an all-pro caliber corner that's currently in the NFL. And I'm pulling up the list to make sure I have the names right. Can you guess which one of these random numbers is from a current NFL player who has already been drafted, and he's an all-pro caliber player?
Is it? I'm going to ask a quick question. I don't know his 40 regardless. But is this Marshawn Lattimore?
It is not Marshawn Lattimore.
Oh dang it! I was hoping you were going to tie it into the earlier, but I
thought about it, but didn't go that way.
I'm going to say it's the 4.42.
All right, let me hold these. You said 4.42?
Yeah.
Oh, you were close. It's the 4.41.
So because the guys are getting faster, so I figured it can't be one of the 4.34s. But
it's not even that they're getting faster. I think the pro days they don't have laser times, so it's not official times. They're always a little bit faster because they're taking care of their guys there, so they're always clocking them a little bit quicker. But
yes,
because this guy's there. Number of quickest times: Eric Stokes, cornerback from Georgia. The second fastest, the 4.37. Actually, the 4.37s are Greg Newsome from Northwestern and Tyson Campbell, also from Georgia. The 4.41, that's Jalen Ramsey, who came out of Florida State and is one of the best corners in the game today, obviously. And then the 4.42, Patrick Surtain, who was supposed to be a slower corner, but still, like I said, 4.42, only a hundredth of a second behind Jalen Ramsey. That's kind of surprising for a corner who's supposed to be slower coming out. And then the final one, the 4.45, Asante Samuel Jr., obviously the son of former Pro Bowler Asante Samuel. He comes from Florida State. Probably going to be a slot corner in the NFL. So those are the times. I just like to point out that times have gotten faster, but I don't necessarily think the players have gotten faster. Just maybe the trigger fingers on those stopwatches have gotten a little bit antsy.
Big coughing. Yeah. That kind of stuff makes me wonder about the legitimate time for like my 40. Because I know a couple of years ago when I was a little bit younger, and I'm faster than I was then, I got clocked and it was clocked, but it was 4.7, right? And I was faster this last year. And it's like I never actually know what the time is because it's not like a laser time, right?
Yeah, you have no idea
for that stuff.
But you can still brag. It's like pick the lower number, pick the faster time.
Yeah, if I were to go completely 100% to all the rigging for myself, my buddy who I was slightly faster than ran like a 4.58 at his best. I'm slightly faster than him. I highly doubt our times are actually that.
No. So that means you're basically running like a 4.65 or something like that, or a 4.6 or something like that.
Which isn't actually horrendous, but
no, it's still a pretty good time, don't get me wrong, but
it's certainly not the same.
Not NFL speed, not necessarily that quick, McGinnis.
No, that'd be like darn slow running back NFL speed is what that is.
Oh yeah, it is. Those are running backs that don't get drafted until like the 5th or 6th round because they're too slow.
It is first college division though.
Yep.
I also weigh less than most of those guys though.
Well, yeah, that's true. You're also probably like 50 pounds less than most of those guys, 50 or 60 pounds at least. But
yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about in today's show?
I think that's all we got. I am excited again for coming up with the NHL Trade Deadline, and I'm thinking about we'll talk about this on the next Sam and Sam show, but we might have actually full coverage on the Grueling Truth of the NHL Trade Deadline from like 9 a.m. to when it ends in the afternoon with an NHL show. I did something similar to that last year over Twitter, and I'll keep it there as well. Kind of drove me insane. You get really tired, but it's so worth it because the craziness happens. We had a trade podcast later that day. So if you're looking for NHL Trade Deadline coverage, April the 12th, come here on the Facebook page.
No, I did that with the Nhl Draft last year where I was live throughout the entire first round of the draft. It gets a little tiring, but it's also fun if you have other people out there to help you out with it. But
yeah, if you're by yourself, it's death.
Oh, you're by yourself. It's silence is deafening. It's tough when you're just you. But thank you all for tuning in tonight. We've had a pretty good number of live listeners throughout the show. We appreciate you guys tuning in. I'd like to remind everyone we are live on the Grueling Truth Sports Network on their Facebook page every Friday night at 9:30. I think we're keeping that time moving forward for now. We will tell you if we adjust it, but for now, we're still planning on doing 9:30 at night. So thank you all for stopping by. Like I said, we always appreciate the support. If you can like and follow the Facebook page, that'd be great. Or whatever platform you're watching us on, if it's YouTube, if it's Twitch, if it's on Twitter somehow through Periscope, whatever you're watching on, we just appreciate you guys listening along. So thank you. Have a good night.